everybody. Welcome back to A Cult of Misfits. I'm Matt Owens. Thanks to everybody who's been supporting me, listening to the podcast, checking out my content. If you're interested, you can listen to A Cult of Misfits on all of the places where you find a podcast. I don't have to explain. If you don't know how to find a podcast at this point, then it's not meant for you, so don't worry about it. Just have a good day. Otherwise, for all of you that are savvy, you know where to find a podcast, A Cult of Misfits. Thank you to everybody who's been listening, and I appreciate all of you following the podcast on whatever platform you choose to listen to my sweet, sweet voice on. I'm also on Instagram, obviously, and Twitter or X, A Cult of Misfits, if you're interested in finding more content of mine in those locations. Today I want to talk about what it's like living out of my car. I haven't talked about that in a while, and I feel led to talk about it. And I've been sitting here in my car recording this as we speak, just generally overthinking what I'm about to talk about. And so I've always found that anytime I start overthinking things a bit too much and trying to be all professional and cool and put a glisten and a gleam on things, that it turns out to be not so authentic. So we're just going to kind of roll with things today. I got notes, I got things to talk about, so we'll just sort of work our way through them. But I feel like I haven't talked about living out of my car in a while, and it's time to come back to that. It's time to come back to my roots. I feel like the secret sauce to the podcast, the secret sauce to the content that I put out is me just being open and real and honest about the things that are going on in my life. And so that involves talking about living out of my car. I've been meaning to record this for a while. I've had to put a pause on it off and on again because, a few reasons. For those of you that have been following me, you know that I've been pursuing sobriety lately. I have been not smoking weed and not drinking, and because of that, I'm sort of in this rebalancing, rejiggering period of my life where my body doesn't know what the F is going on. My brain is a bit frazzled. I'm not really firing on all cylinders as I'm sort of pushing through the initial stages of sobriety. So I'm sort of taking it slow. I'm trying not to rush things, and when I feel like recording or making content, then I do. I try not to force it. And I have been feeling a bit wonky lately, and so that's why I haven't been pumping out as much content as I normally do. Just a heads up to those of you that enjoy what I'm doing here. But I was just getting ready to start winding up again and start recording more stuff, more episodes, more transmissions, and I got hit with some sort of a virus. It wasn't that bad, honestly. I just had sort of a mild cough, and then it sort of metamorphosized into what I could only describe as emphysema. I'm not a doctor, but it definitely felt like emphysema. The coughs that were coming out of me, it sounded like a death rattle. It sounded like a creature from the depths of the underworld was trying to escape from my chest every time I was coughing. There were things rattling around in there that were probably unholy. So I've sort of come out of that darkness, and I'm feeling a bit better now. I'm not hacking up a lung. My chest isn't collapsing as it once was. I was coughing so hard that I pulled something in my rib, or I dislocated something, or something collapsed. I don't know what happened, but it feels like a Clydesdale horse kicked me in the rib, and so I'm still sort of recovering from that. I can't really bend over without excruciating pain, but that's healing, guys. My body is a wonder of God, and it's healing itself. So I'm finally recovering from the great virus, whatever the heck that was. And so I'm feeling better. I'm feeling a bit better. I'm getting more sleep lately, which is sort of a byproduct of sobriety, is you don't get a lot of sleep. But I'm feeling good overall with sobriety, with the no drinking and the no smoking of the weed. It's a rebalancing period, and it's an adjustment period. And overall, I would say that I feel good. I'm I'm proud of myself, first of all, for doing it. It's a huge accomplishment. I've tried many times over the years. I used to smoke cigarettes as well, and it took me about 5,000 times to finally stick the landing, and I haven't smoked cigarettes in over a decade. But 4th of July, I stopped smoking weed and drinking, and slowly but surely, I'm feeling better. Part of the problem is I just feel kind of blah. I feel sort of like I have a grayness to my general demeanor and personality. I feel quite boring, to be honest with you. Back in my early 20s, I used to take antidepressant pills, SSRIs, for depression and just, the darkness. And whenever I took those pills, I just felt blah. I never felt the highs of my emotions and feelings, and I never felt the lows of my feelings and emotions. It was just kind of this middle ground that I hated, because I feel like we're put on this planet to feel the full spectrum of our emotions and feelings. And when I'm on those types of medications, I just feel real bleh. And so I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and YouTube videos about people who are going through this sobriety path that I'm going through, and those that have quit smoking weed. And it's very common, from what I understand, that the smoking of the weed has really just frazzled my serotonin receptors in my brain, and so the things that make me excited and happy and joyful are sort of frazzled at this point from my non-stop smoking of the ganj. So from what I understand, it takes a few months to sort of have those heal, right? Those sweet little receptors in my puny little brain are frantically trying to heal themselves right now. And so from what I understand, as long as I push through this, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that those feelings of excitement and joy and happiness will once again rise to prominence. And so that's sort of what I'm pushing through now. And to be honest, I'm not miserable. Of course, I have dark moments or sad moments or frustrating moments and things of that nature, but it's not overwhelming at all. So I feel like I've made a really good decision, and I feel like I'm on the right path, and that's a good thing. I feel like many of you can relate to this sobriety journey that I'm on, and many of you have talked to me about it, so it feels good to talk about it. So anyway, on the road to healing, on the path to getting better, so that's good. Yay for me, gold star. Let's dive into the meat and potatoes here. Let's dive into really what I've been avoiding for the last several years is talking about living out of my car. I talked about it in the beginning when I was sort of going through it, and in Instagram videos and such, where I was panicking and freaking out and kind of working through my fears. And then there was a period where I sort of gained a stability at that point, and I sort of stopped talking about it. And in the back of my mind, it was always kind of like I was waiting for the universe to deliver me from living out of my car so that I could have a studio again, a home studio like I did back in the day. And I thought, like, well, I'll just stop talking about it until I'm not homeless anymore, and then I'll be able to have a professional studio, and then, hi everybody, I'm back. And recently, God has been prompting me to talk about it more, because I've been learning so many lessons. There's so many things in my life that happened to me, the ups and the downs, that I feel like would be useful to talk about, not just for my own working through of my own shit, but for other people to relate to on some level. So I'm going to start talking about it some more. And I think that it can be useful for not just myself, but for those that are listening as well. So I saw a recent quote that really inspired me and sort of kicked off what we're going to be talking about today, and it's by Dolly Parton, of all people. And she said, if you don't like the road that you're walking on, start paving another one. And that's what I want to talk about today, is if you're unhappy with the path that you're on, which I was, which we'll dive into, it's about having the bravery and the cojones and facing the fears that come along with starting a new path. I had found in my own life that I was very unsatisfied with all of the jobs that I'd had in my life. I worked in restaurants for many, many years because that's just all I knew. And I worked at call centers. I worked at the Netflix call center for a while, which was quite interesting, actually. I worked at Comcast for a while, just call centers, trying to break free from that restaurant life, right? Just to do something a little bit different. But ultimately, I didn't find any satisfaction in that. I think that will come as no surprise to anybody who's worked in customer service or at a call center. It's not ideal. Let's call it not ideal. Not for me. And so I was always just sort of frustrated that I always felt stuck, like I was stuck in this paradigm, that I was stuck in these societal standards that tell us that we must work a 9-to-5 job, otherwise we're going to fail at life, that we are a loser, that we can't be a functioning member of society if you don't participate in the grind by working for the man, etc. And it just, it was depressing to me, honestly, but I didn't know where else to go. I felt blocked in. And, my ex-wife, her and her family both valued the education system a great deal. And in fact, she had told me when we were dating that she wasn't going to marry me unless I got a degree at a university, that I finished my degree. I had kind of putzed around and taken classes here and there and taken some time off and then went back a semester here, a semester there. But I never really found any value in the education system, the university system. But when she threatened me with that, it scared me, and I thought, like, okay, well, she's not going to marry me if I don't get a degree, so I need to do that, I guess, and so I did. I would have handled that and approached that differently nowadays. I'm a different person now, but that's what happened. And so I got a communications degree in media and communications, which ultimately turned out to be completely worthless, right? It led me nowhere, so thanks to University of Washington for that. Very expensive piece of paper that I have. But I found no satisfaction in that. And then I decided that I wanted to pursue entrepreneurship. I thought, like, well, if I can't find any happiness working for the man, then perhaps I'll be my own man and start my own business. So I started pursuing a career in photography, which ultimately ended up being quite successful. But at the end, I stopped doing photography for many reasons. It was a great creative outlet for me. It was a great way to show myself that I can do anything, that I can break free from that paradigm, the 9-to-5 paradigm. But ultimately, I found that to be empty and unsatisfying as well, because it was just a different form of the 9-to-5 grind. I was able to be creative with my photography, but I still found myself dealing with scheduling and emails and, just editing endless photos and dealing with social media and SEO, search engine optimization, and dealing with setting up a website and finding new clients and always trying to build. It just felt like work again. And ultimately, I found it unsatisfying. And that depressed me because I felt stuck again. I was like, well, if I can't find happiness and satisfaction working at a call center or a restaurant or working for somebody else or working in a cubicle in some soulless, lifeless, gray building, and I also can't find satisfaction in building my own business that for a while brought me some happiness, then what does that mean for me? I always felt like I had a gun to my head. I felt like I wanted to pursue these different things, these different avenues, but I had this gun to my head that was always saying, you better find a way to make money, better find a way to make this thing work, otherwise you're going to be homeless. You're going to be living out of your car if you don't. When I was married to my ex, I pursued just various avenues of creativity. I pursued painting for a while. I always wanted to try painting. I don't know, let's see if I'm any good at it. Let's see if I enjoy it. And I did, and I loved it, and I had such a great time doing it. But there was always my ex-wife at the time was always saying, like, you better find a way to make this thing work. You better find a way to turn this thing into a career. Otherwise, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And there's always that stressful voice in my head, whether it was her voice or, or the voice of the adversary in my head trying to scare me and convince me that I'm on the wrong path. And so I wanted the freedom to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, without the fear of failure, without the fear that I was going to fail, right? I wanted to break free from that. Just thinking about the idea of, cover letters and Microsoft Excel and resumes and interviews, and it just made me sick to my stomach thinking about it, because I didn't want to be a part of that. And I wanted the freedom to pursue whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. I'm always talking about freedom, and I didn't know how to pursue that freedom. Part of me longed for the old days, right? The days when, really pre-industrial revolution days, right? Where there were apprenticeships, and there were merchants and craftsmen and farmers and priests and traders, and you learned a skill or a craft from your father, and he learned it from his father, and it's just sort of, whether you're doing farming or whatever, it just the lanes were simple. And there wasn't this pressure to grind. There wasn't this, this intense consumerism, this intense, thirst for profit, and the rise of corporations and mass production, and always trying to have more, and always trying to, compete with others, and even things like agriculture started being taken over by these corporate interests and profit, and trying to crank out as much stuff as they could for as much profit as they could. And then we talk about things like just greed, right? Just this endless greed, this thirst for more, this thirst for money, this endless desire to have the latest iPhone, the latest technology, the latest upgrade. I just don't like it. And it puts a gross taste in my mouth when I think about it, when I talk about it. And so part of me longs for the old days where things were simpler. Part of me wanted to just live on a plot of land, to live a simple life, right? Maybe have a cow, maybe have a couple chickens. And I don't want to, I honestly don't want to live on a hippie commune. That doesn't sound appetizing to me. I don't want to live in a commune. I don't want to go to the bathroom on a pile of sawdust in a hole in my backyard to live a simple life. I don't want to completely go off grid and go crazy and start my own farm and never interact with society. I don't want to go full Amish. That's not what I'm talking about, because there are aspects of modern society that I do enjoy. I enjoy watching Netflix. I enjoy getting stuff on Amazon every now and then. I enjoy parts of modern living, but really I just long for the freedom to do what I want, to be a part of the world, but not to be of the world, but not in the world. Maybe I'm not saying that right. It doesn't matter. I want to participate in the world in my own way, right? I don't want to do it according to what society or my ex-wife or my family or what anybody thinks that I should be doing or how I should be doing it. So I wanted to break free from that. I felt like I was a slave to the system. I felt like that's what the university system is set up for, is to just standardize everybody, to have everybody conform to a certain way of being, to eliminate free thinking, eliminate the freedom to think for oneself. I was so frustrated when I was at college because I quickly found that my professors did not want me to voice my own opinion. They did not want me to question what they were telling me. I often found there was a lot of pushback and furrowed brows and frustration from nearly every one of my professors when I pushed back on something that they were telling me, a concept, and I wasn't being argumentative, I wasn't being an asshole about it, but just simply pushing back and from a different perspective, and they were not interested in that. And you can see that trickle down into the scientific community and the medical community and the scholarly community now that all come from that university system. There's a conformity to it. There's a standardization to it. And if you step outside of that standardization, outside of that conformity, you're ostracized, right? You are labeled as a fool. And I always thought that universities were a place of free thinking, and I've quickly found that perhaps there was a time that they once were, but that has shifted now, and it's a place of conformity. And I don't like that. I want to be able to think for myself. I want the freedom to have new ideas, to question things, right? In 2020, during the pandemic, I had this period where I started questioning everything. Started questioning why I believe certain things, why I do certain things in my life, why I follow certain paradigms in my life, and whether or not I want to continue following those paradigms in my life, right? Questioning the things in my life that work and don't work for me any longer, for my new way of thinking. That I wanted to create a new paradigm for myself. I didn't want to completely break free from society and go full Ted Kaczynski, living in a cabin in the woods by myself, ranting and raving. That's not what I was interested in. But I did recognize that I was a part of a system, a machine, a matrix, if you will, and I wanted to find a way to break free from it. And so I had a lot of conversations with God, with the universe, with the divine, asking how I can break free, asking for help from the divine to show me a path to freedom, because I couldn't find my way out. And so after a lot of prayer, a lot of contemplation, a lot of talks with God, a lot of late night talks with God, God told me that there was a path out. There was a way to break free from the matrix, but it was going to have to, I was going to have to face my fears. That a lot of things that were preventing me from breaking free from these paradigms were my own fears, my own limiting beliefs within my own mind. And that in order to break free, that I was going to need to make some sacrifices in my life. That I was going to have to give up a lot of things in my life that I may or may not be ready for. And God said that in order to face my fears, I was going to have to, and break free from these paradigms, that it was going to involve giving away all of my possessions. Very biblical, right? Jesus said to his followers that in order to follow him, that they would have to give up their old life, literally and metaphorically, right? To lay down the old ways, to give away their belongings, and to follow him. And that's what God said that I needed to do in order to step into this new paradigm, this new chapter of my life, in order to experience the freedom that I was seeking. That I would have to give away my belongings, and that I was going to have to spend a season living in my car. To face my fears of homelessness, to face my fears of loneliness, to face my fears of judgment from those around me. And that God would lead me every step of the way, that I would be taken care of every step of the way, that everything ultimately would work out in the end, but that this was the path to freedom. And that I would have to have faith and trust in the divine to see me through that. And so ultimately, the short version of the story is that's what I did. And this is what I want to talk about more and elaborate on in future transmissions, future episodes, future Instagram videos, is to dive deeper into this and to talk more about it, the different aspects of it and what I've learned through it, and how I've grown through it, and what it's shown me. So I just feel like I'm on this path to freedom, and the story is still unfolding before me. I feel like in many ways it relates to the hero's journey, the stereotypical, it's all very symbolic. The unfolding of my path and this journey that I've decided to go on. And so I want to talk about it more. And this is just the start of that. And I just want to explore more of that with you guys and talk more about the reasons why I've decided to pursue this path and why it's led me here. But ultimately, it's very similar to the path and the story of Moses in the Bible. For those of you that aren't familiar with the story of Moses in the Bible, he took the slaves in Egypt. The Israelites were slaves, and they were looking for a new life. And so Moses led them to the path of freedom in a very similar way that I'm doing now. And it ended up leading to wandering around in the desert for 40 years. 40 years is a very symbolic time in the Bible. It's used numerous times. 40 years wandering in the desert with Moses and the Israelites. Jesus was in the desert dealing with the devil for 40 days, 40 nights. During the great flood, when Noah was on the great ark, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. It's sort of this symbolic time period of restructuring, of suffering, of the tower falling, of assessing who you are, showing yourself what you're made of. It's a time of tests. It's a time of trials and tribulations. And so in many ways, I feel like I've been going through my 40 days and 40 nights in my car. And part of that is knowing that there are seasons to everything, that it's a finite period of time. It wasn't indefinite. Moses wasn't wandering around in the desert for an endless amount of time. It was 40 years. And when you're in it, it feels like forever, right? It feels like it's never going to end. And it's about learning to push through. It's about learning to have faith and trust in the unseen, and the unseen hand of the divine guiding and leading us where we ultimately need to go and need to be. Trusting that there's a destination, that there's a land of milk and honey waiting for us at the end of this trial. And so maybe you're going through your 40 days and 40 nights right now. Maybe you're in a dark place where you don't know what you're doing. You're in unknown territory. You're in the desert. No food, no water. Everything is scary. I've never been here before. Scared out of your mind. But for me, it's about finding consolation in knowing that there is a higher power that's looking out for me, that cares for me, that knows what's in my heart, that knows that I'm scared, and is embracing me and saying, all is well. All is well, my child. Fear not. Trust in me. I will lead you where you need to be. And so that's what I've been doing the last several years as I'm wandering around in the desert of my Ford Escape, trying to escape the paradigm, escape the matrix, escape the old way of living, and to forge a new path that will ultimately lead me to the freedom that I desire. And so I'll continue to update you. I will continue to elaborate on these stories of my life the last couple of years, what I've been dealing with, what I've learned. because a part of me has been afraid. I'm always a proponent of facing my fears, in case that wasn't obvious, by becoming homeless and living out of my car. And I realized that part of my fear was talking about it. I was afraid of people's judgment. I was afraid that I wouldn't, I wanted to record these podcasts and record these videos, but I didn't want to do it from inside of my car. And God said, why not? My child, why not? And I had to think about that. I didn't know the answer. And it was, a large part of it was because I was embarrassed, right? I didn't want people to know. And so I hid that part. And part of finding freedom for me is no longer putting those things under a bushel. But to expose them, not only to myself, but to the world, and say, I'm not embarrassed of these things anymore. I want to talk about them. I want to put them into the light. Because when we hide these things from ourselves or from those around us, it doesn't expose them to the light. It keeps them in the darkness. And so I want to talk about it more. I want to stop being embarrassed about it. I want to stop pretending that it's something that it isn't. And I want to continue to embrace the authenticity behind that. So I look forward to talking about this more in the future and expanding upon it and seeing where it leads me. Ultimately, I'm excited for where this is all headed. And I invite you on the journey as well. Love you.